Hello everyone, I am Manas Kamal Das and today I am going to demonstrate my project for the subject Database Management System. And for this project, I am considering the scenario of University Library Management System. So in this project, I'll be setting up a connection between my Python environment and the Oracle database, and I'll be executing all the SQL queries from my Python console, and also I'll be showing the outputs generated in my Python console. So before moving on to the coding part, I'll just describe my scenario with the help of an ER diagram. So this is the entity relationship diagram for my scenario. As you can see, there are 6 entities which are student, fine, book, issue, department, and library staff. And all the entities are having their respective attributes. For example, if you consider the student, then it is having join date, that is the date when the student joins the university, age, which is a derived attribute that can be derived from the date of birth, student ID, which is a primary key, name, email, which can be treated as a multi-valued attribute, then we have the date of birth, and address, which is again a composite attribute that can further be divided into street, state, city, and country. So likewise, we are having six entities, and all the entities are having their respective attribute. Also, these entities are connected with certain relationships. That is, if you consider the manager's relationship, then it is a relationship between library staff and issue. Now, issue is a table which will be having all the records of the books that are being issued to the students by the library staff. So the library staff will manage the issue table, and the library staff is having its own attributes such as the staff ID, which is the primary key, name, position, and hire date. So this is the ER diagram of my scenario. Now, for this scenario, I'll be creating 6 tables for the 6 entities, and also I'll be creating 2 additional tables for the associated relationship, that is borrows between student and book, and issued for between student, book, and issue. As you can see, all the other relationships are either one-to-one, one-to-many, or many-to-one. Only these 2 relationships, that is borrows and issued for, are many-to-many relationship. So we need to create additional associated relationship table for them. So since the scenario is clear, now let's move on to the coding part. So this is the code. Now, for establishing a connection between my Python environment and the Oracle database, I need to install a library which is CX Oracle library. Now, as you can see in the first cell, I have installed the CX Oracle library in my Python environment. Now, I won't be running this cell again, because even if I run, it will be showing requirement already satisfied. Since the library is already installed, I can just show you by running. As you can see here, the requirement is already satisfied since the library is already installed. So I just need to import the library, and also I'll print the version to verify the installation. So as you can see, the library is imported and the version is 8.3.0. Now, with the help of this library, I'll be establishing a connection with the Oracle database. So I am using txoracle.connect. And in this method, I am passing arguments as system, which is the name of the user, 123, which is my password, localhost, the host name, 1521, the port, and XC refers to the Oracle Express Edition service name. So I'm passing this all these attributes, and I'm establishing a connection. Then I'm creating a cursor object with the help of connection.cursor. Now this cursor object is very important, as in the further code for executing the SQL statements, we need to use this cursor object. And also I'm verifying whether the connection is established properly or not by selecting rows from a table which is already there in my database, or known as the hostelers table. I already have this table in my database, so I'm just checking whether I'm able to fetch the records from my database or not. So I'll run this code once. And as you can see, the rows are getting fetched. That means the connection is established properly and the data can be fetched from the database. Now, using this cursor object, we can do our further code. So I'll be executing I'll be answering some questions regarding my university library management scenario. So the first question is create all the necessary tables for the scenario with the specified attributes in the relational schema with the following constraint. So we have certain constraints that we need to uh, follow. That is for the department table, we have primary key on department ID and a unique constraint on dep name. That is the name of every department should be unique and the department ID should be treated as a primary key for this table. Now for student table, I am having a primary key on student ID and a unique constraint on email and foreign key on department ID, which will be referencing the department ID of the department table. Since every student must belong to one table, must belong to one department, so I'll be having the department ID of the department as a foreign key in the student table. And we are having some additional constraints like not null on name, not null on email, not null on DOB, and not null on join date. So like that, for every table, I'm having constraints. So for book table, for library staff table, for issue table, borrows table, issued for table, and find table. So coming to the coding part, this is my code. In this part, I'm importing pandas, which is the library. Then I'm importing NumPy. Panda will be required in order to create data frame so that after fetching the records from the Oracle database, I can show it in a table form. To show it in a tabular form, I need to create data frame which with the help of pandas. As you can see in the earlier code, here I am fetching the record, but the records are being shown in the form of tuples. But for proper formatting and so that it becomes more readable, I want to show it in a tabular form. So for that, I'm using the pandas library. Then I'm having NumPy's library. And this is just for presentation part where I'm writing the subject code, my name, and all my information. And this is the creation table which will be showed at the end if the tables are successfully created. That is, the following tables are created for the University Library Management System. And I have written with the name of all the tables that are created. So as you can see, there are 8 tables, 6 tables for the entities, then 2 tables for the associated relationship. And this is the query for creating the department table. I'm using create table command, create table department, dep ID number, dep name varchar2 since it is a name. So I have kept it as varchar2 255. Then I'm specifying the constraints pkdid, that is primary key on department ID and unique constraint on department name. And the department ID of this department table is used as a foreign key in the student table. So this is create table command for student. I'm specifying all the attributes like student ID, department ID, name, etc. So the student ID is the primary key and email is having unique constraint and the department ID of the department table is used as a foreign key in the student table since every student must belong to one department. So likewise, these are the rest of the create table commands for book, for library staff, for issue, for borrows, for issued for, and for file. So after writing the create table commands, I'm storing it in variables. Now, I'm creating one list that is table statements. In table statements, I'm storing the name of the variables in which I'm storing all the create table commands along with the table name so that I can execute all these statements. I can create all the statements in a loop so that I don't need to write the create table again and again so that I can, since there are 8 tables, so that I can execute all these statements and create the tables in a loop. So I'm storing it in a list known as table statements. And now I'm using a try except block for handling the errors. Now in try, I am writing my code for executing the statement for statement comma table name in table statements. So the statement, that is the variable in which the create table command is stored, and the department, which is the table name, these two will be selected. So cursor.execute statement. So when execute statement when the statement is passed for department table, this statement will be executed as it is stored in create department table variable. So I'll be executing this statement. That means the tables will be created. After that, we need to commit after every operation. So I'm using connection.commit so that the changes remain permanently. And then I'm retrieving and displaying the structure of the created table from the user tab columns. Now, user tab columns is a view which is in Oracle database, which contains the metadata of all the columns of the tables owned by the user. So from there, I am fetching the column name, data type, and data length from the user tab columns view, where table name is the table for which the statement is executed. Then rows cursor.fetch all. I am fetching all the rows of this statement, that is cursor when I selected the structure of the specific table, then I'm fetching the records, and those records I'm storing as a data frame, and I'm printing it to show it in a tabular form. And after that, if this creating the table operation is successful, then it will show this creation message. Else, if there is an error, then it will return an error creating tables, and it will specify what error occurred. So this is a try and accept block for handling the error. So now I'll just execute this code. So as you can see, the tables are created successfully. So this is the structure of the department table, the structure of student table, structure of book table, library staff table, issue, borrows, issued for table, and fine table. So at the end, since the create table operation was successful, so this message is shown, that is the following tables are created for the University Library Management System with the specified constraints. And all the description, that is the structure of all the tables, are shown. Now, after creating the table, let's move on to the second question, which is the second question is having two parts, A and B. The A part is alter the table department to add the columns HOD name and establish year. Ensure that establish year must be after 1950. So the second question, that is part A and part B, both are alter table commands. And the third question is about inserting. Like after altering the specified tables, insert a minimum of 5 records in each table. So here we need to execute two operations, that is altering and inserting records. Now, for altering the tables and inserting the records, I decided to create a menu-driven program. Since I wanted my program to be a bit interactive, I wanted my project to be a bit interactive. So I have created a menu-driven program, that is for altering and inserting. I'll be taking input from the user by showing a list of choices, which is known as menu. So users will be selecting from those choices, like for altering the tables, I'll be asking which table do you want to alter? And if you want to alter, then which operation do you want to perform? Do you want to add a column? Do you want to add a constraint, drop a constraint, etc.? So I wanted to make my project interactive, and for that I created a menu-driven program. So here you can see this is the main menu, which which when executed it will show this message that choose from the following: alter tables, insert records, or exit. If you click the exit, then it will exit this while loop. Otherwise, it will be running. So this while true, it is an infinite while loop, so that again and again the user will be able to alter or insert records n number of times as much as the user wants. So this main menu will be printed, and then the user is prompted to enter the choice number from the above main menu. So if the choice is 1, that is alter table, then the user will be asked which table do you want to alter, and all the table names are displayed. And after that, when the user enters the table name, then what operation do you want to perform? Do you want to add column, drop column, modify column, add constraint, or drop constraint? So this will be asked. Then when the user will enter the choice, so if the operation is add column, then the program will ask like how many columns do you want to add. Since the user may enter one column, two columns, or n number of columns. So the program will ask how many columns do you want to enter. And based upon that, it will, in a for loop, it will add the table one by one. It will ask for the column name, column type, and then this SQL statement, that is alter table, table name, add column name, column type. So this will be executed with the help of this try and except block, again, which is used for error handling. If the table is altered successfully, then it will show that column added successfully to the table. Else, if there is an error, then it will return the error. So in a similar structure, I have written the code for all the operations, that is for drop column, for modify column, for adding constraint, for dropping constraint. In a similar way, I have written all the codes. That is, first the user will be asked how many constraints or how columns do you want to add, and that according to the number of columns or constraints the users want to add, the for loop will keep on adding the columns or the constraints one by one. And if user enters an invalid operation, then it will show this message: invalid operation, please choose from the operations that are mentioned. Then after altering the table, I also need to show the structure of the table, that is the updated structure of the table. So this query is for fetching the updated structure of the table, again from the user tab columns view. And then if there is any constraint, then it will fetch the constraint details from these user constraints and user cons columns views. So it will fetch the constraint, and then it will join these two tables, it will merge these two tables, and then it will show the updated structure of the table, which will have the column names, the details, and also the constraints that are being added. And then it will ask the user that do you want to alter another table? If the user enters no, then the loop will break. If the user enters yes, then it will again prompt for the similarly, like which operation do you want to perform. Then this was the code for the altering the table. Now this is the after altering, we need to perform insertion. So this is the code. So if choice is equal to 2, then which table do you want to insert into? It will show all the table names. Then at first I will, based on the table name that is being given by the user, I will fetch all the columns of that specific table from the user tab columns view. And I'll show the user that these are the columns that are in the table. And please enter the input in the correct format. So enter the rows to insert one row per line. So I have made my program in such a way that in one row you can enter one row as a whole. And if you need to finish entering the data, then you need to enter an empty line. Then the loop will be broken. So rows input while true. So it will take capture each line one by one. If row.strip equal to an empty string, that means the user is just entering enter, blank enter, then it will break. And then at the end, it will append each of the inputs that the user is giving in the rows input list. And then for each row that is entered by the user, it will be entered in a for loop. Again, I'm using try except block to handle the error. Then after inserting, I need to make sure that the changes are permanent. So for that, I'm using connection.commit. Then if the operation is successful, it will show all rows inserted successfully. And then I'll display the updated table content by using select star from table. And it will show in a tabular form with the help of pd.dataframe. That is, df is the data frame. It will be displayed in a tabular form. So again, the user will be asked if you want to enter more rows. If the user enters yes, then the loop will continue. If no, then the loop will break. So if the choice is 3, that is the user wants to exit, then it will show the final message, which is all the tables are created and populated successfully. Else, if the user enters any other choice like 4, 5, 6, then it will show invalid input. Please select from the menu. So let me execute this code now. As you can see, this is the main menu. Choose from the following: alter tables, insert records, exit. Now since for 2A, I need to first alter the table department. So I'll choose the option as 1. As you can see, as I chose alter tables, it is asking me which table do you want to alter. Now I need to first alter the department table. So I'll select the department table. I'll enter the name here. And then what operation do you want to perform? I want to perform an add column operation. And then how many columns do you want to add? We have to add 2 columns, that is the HOD name and the established year. So 2. So enter the name for column 1. So the column 1 name will be HOD name. Then enter the data type of column 1 since this is a name. So let us use varchar 2 to 55. So column HOD name added successfully to the department table. Now it is asking me the input for the column 2. Now our column 2 is established year. Established year. And since it is a year, so let's keep it as a number. So as you can see, the column established year is also added successfully to the department table. And after adding the 2 columns, it is showing me the updated structure of the department column, which is having the HOD name and established year. Now, do you want to alter the table mode? Yes, because I need to enter constraints as well. So in the same department table, for established year, we need to add a constraint. Basically, we need to add a check constraint, which will ensure that the established year is after 1950. So I will choose this option, add constraint. And then how many constraints do you want to add? I have only one constraint, so I'll enter 1. And then enter the type of constraint 1. So I'll enter the type as check. Then enter the name of the column you want to apply the constraint to, that is established year. Then enter the details of the constraint 1. So the details of the constraint 1 is that established year must be after 1950. Enter the name of the constraint. So I'll enter the name as CHK, since this is a check constraint, CSK, EST, established, and YR. Yeah. So as you can see, the constraint checked is applied successfully on the column established here in the table department. As you can see in the updated structure of the table, this is reflecting the established year number and check EST year. Now, the first question is completed. So let's come to the B part of the question, that is alter the table student to add a new column graduation year which must be between 2015 and 2030 and set a default value of 2024. So as you can see in the first part, we needed to add 2 columns, that is HOD name and established year, and there was only one constraint on the established year. But here in the B part, we needed to add 1 column, that is graduation year, to the student table. But in the same graduation year column, we have to add 2 constraints. That is, first, a check constraint which ensures that the graduation year must be between 2015 and 30, and then a default constraint. So in case if the user doesn't type any input, then the default value should be 2024. So let's go to the program. So do you want to alter another table? I'll enter yes. So which table do you want to alter? So I'll select the student table. So what operation do you want to perform? We need to perform first the add column operation. Then how many columns do you want to add? This time we have only 1 column, that is the graduation year. Enter the name of column 1, graduation. year. Enter the data type of column 1. Since it is the year, let's keep it as number. So this is the updated structure of the student table. As you can see, the graduation year is also mentioned. Now let's add the two constraints of the graduation year column. So I'll type yes, and now in the same student table, I'll select the add constraint operation. Now this time, how many constraints do you want to add? This time we have two constraints. So enter the type of constraint 1. So the first constraint is a check constraint. Then the name of the column to apply the constraint to, that is the graduation year. Then the details of the constraint 1, which is that the graduation year should be between 2015 and 2030. And then the name of the constraint. So I'll keep it as CHK GRAD grad YR. So as you can see, constraint checked applied successfully on the column graduation year. Now enter the type of constraint 2. Now this time we have a default constraint that the default value is 2024 in case the user doesn't give any input. So enter the name of the column to apply the constraint to. It is the same, that is the graduation year. And then enter the details of constraint 2, which is the default value, that is 2024. So as you can see, constraint default applied successfully on column graduation year. So both the constraints have been applied successfully. Check is also applied successfully and default is also applied successfully. And this is the updated structure of the table. In this objective structure, you can only see one constraint, that is check grad year. This is because this is the constraint name column. Since the default doesn't work in the similar, the syntax of default is not the same. That is, while when you are giving a default constraint, then you need to specify it in modify operation. You need to specify it in modify command, that alter table, table name, modify column name, default the default details. For other constraint, you need to specify this way, that alter table, table name, add constraint, constraint name, constraint type, and constraint details. So since we didn't give any name for the default constraint, so in the constraint name, the name is not coming. Only for check constraint the name is coming. But as you can see, this success message is displayed that the default constraint is also applied successfully. So we can ensure that the default constraint is applied, because since this was inside the try catch try and except block, so if the default constraint was not applied correctly, if there was an error, then the error would have been displayed. But since the success message is displayed properly, so that means the default constraint is also added. So now, do you want to alter? No, we don't want to alter, because the alter operation is completed. And now we have completed the second question. So we have the third question, that is, so both the alter table operation are finished. So we have the third question, which is, after altering the specified tables, insert a minimum of 5 records in each table. So there should be a minimum of 5 records in every table. So I will select option number 2, which belongs to insert records. Now which table do you want to insert into? First, we need to insert in department table. I'll enter department. And see, as I enter department, from the user tab columns view, it fetched all the column names that department has, and it is asking me to enter the rows in this particular format only, so that there is no error. And after that, until I'll be entering the rows, it will be taking all the input. To finish giving the input, I need to enter an empty line, that is just a blank enter. So I already have the values in a notepad file. So I'll open that and I'll just copy paste it from here to save time. So I'll copy paste the first row I'll enter here. Then I'll copy paste the second row. Then the third row. Then the fourth row, 1004, which belongs to the chemical department. And then the fifth row, which belongs to the civil department. So I have entered all the 5 records in the department table. Now to finish the input, I'll just press a blank enter. And as you can see, the rows are executed in a for loop. They're inserted in a for loop. So for each row, when it is getting successfully inserted, it is displaying the messages separately. And at the end, if all the rows are successfully inserted, then it is displaying me this success message that all rows inserted successfully. And this is the updated content of the table. Here we are having total 5 departments from 0 to 4, and each having its own unique department ID, which is treated as a primary column, which is treated as the primary key. And the department names are computer science, electrical, mechanical, chemical, civil, which with their HOD name and established year. And notice that the established year is greater than 1950, which is also following the constraint. So like this, we can insert the records for all the tables. So I'll just pause the video here and I'll quickly insert all the records to save time. And then after inserting the records, we can execute certain the other questions that are some custom queries. So I'll pause the video here and I'll insert all the records to save time. So guys, as you can see that I have inserted the records in all the 8 tables. So this is the find table. All the rows are inserted successfully. The find table is having records from 1 to 7. That means it is having 8 records. Then this is the issued for table, which is having 18 records. Then this is the borrows table. This is the borrows table, which is having only 2 columns. There is the student ID and the book ID to show the information that which student have borrowed what books. It is also having 18 records. Then this is the issue table, which is having the issue ID, staff ID, and return date. Here you can see one thing, that the return date in some columns, that is here, here, and here, it is showing as NAT, N-A-T, which means in pandas it means that not a time. This NAT represents those return dates which are entered as null by the user. This records means that the student has borrowed the table, has issued the book. The student has borrowed the book recently, and he or she hasn't returned yet. That means the student has borrowed the book recently and hasn't yet returned. So that's why for those students the return date is null. And since null, like the records are fetched from the Oracle database and it is interpreted by pandas as date time values. Now pandas could not interpret the null value as date time, so it is showing NAT. That is not a time. That is not a date time value. As you can see here, I have inserted certain return dates as null. So corresponding to those return dates, it is showing NAT. That means not a time. It is not a date time value. Since it is null, there is no value. So these students which are having null return date, they have recently borrowed the book and they haven't returned yet. So this is the library staff table, staff ID, staff name, position, hire date. It is having 10 records. Then this is, I guess it's the book table. It is having the book ID, title, author, edition. Then this is the student table. It is having the records of 15 students. So all the 8 tables are, the records are entered successfully. So after entering the record, Uh, I entered as no since I finished inserting. So I selected option number 3, exit. So since all the records, all the tables are created and populated successfully, it is showing me the success message. That is, all the tables are created and populated successfully. Now, since the table creation, alteration, and insertion part is complete, we have completed the first question, the second question, and the third question. So let's move on to the fourth question, which are certain custom queries. We need to perform certain operation. We need to show certain outputs. So these are custom queries. So the first question is, insert a new student record into the student table for a student belonging to the computer science department with student ID, this one, name John Doe, date of birth 12 January 2004, address 10 Downing Street, Westminster, London, United Kingdom, email john@example.com, join date, this date. So I need to give the current system date as the join date and also insert the graduation year based on the maximum graduation year of the existing students, based on the maximum graduation year of the existing students. So for that, I have written the query. Again, I have written it inside a try except block to handle error. So first, this code snippet is for selecting the current student table before inserting. Select star from student, rows cursor dot fetch all. I'm fetching all the rows returned by the cursor object. Then I'm storing the column, I'm retrieving the column names from cursor.description. Then I'm making a data frame, pandas data frame, using the rows as the rows of the data frame. That is the rows fetched by the cursor.fetchAll as the rows of the data frame. Then columns, I'm keeping it as the column names that I'm getting from the cursor.description. Then I'm printing the table before the insertion. Before inserting, I'm showing the table. Then I'm executing this query, which is the insert into command, the insert into student values. I'm giving in the proper format. First comes register number, then this is the department ID. Now, since the student belongs to the computer science department, and as you can remember, computer science department had the department ID 1001. So I'm entering the 1001 department ID, then John Doe, then the email, then the birth date, the date of birth, then the sys date, which is the joining date. Since here it is asked to enter the join date as the sys date. So the current system date will be passed as the joining date. Then this is, I have broken down the address since this address is a composite attribute. So I'm entering the street name, then the state, the city, and the country. And then I'm entering the graduation year of the student as select max graduation year from student. After that, I'm printing the success message. If this operation is successful, insert into the print row inserted successfully, connection.commit to ensure the changes are permanent. Then I'm selecting this same code snippet that earlier I used for showing the table before insertion. I paste it here as well so that we can differentiate that the row is actually inserted. And if there is an error, this try block will not be executed. This except block will execute it and it will show the error. So let me run this code. So as you can see, the table insertion has been completed successfully. So this is the table before insertion. Here, as you can see, we have 15 records from 0 to 14. So the last student is Jennifer Harris. And now the row inserted successfully into the table. So table after insertion is, here we have 15. That is from 0 to 15, we have 16 records. So the last number before insertion was 14. Now it is 15. And the name is John Doe. Here you can see the sys date is entered. Today's date is entered. That is 4/11/2024. And the graduation year is entered on the basis of the maximum graduation. Here you can see the max graduation is 2027. Rest all the graduation years are smaller than it, less than it. So this max graduation year is selected as the graduation year for this specific student. And the joining date is entered is the sys date, 4/11/2024. Today's date, that is. So this question is completed. We entered the join date as the sys date and also the graduation year as the maximum graduation year. So next, move on to the next question, that is increase the fine amount by 15% for students who belong to the computer science department and have borrowed more than 3 books. So those students who belong to the computer science department and have borrowed more than 3 books, their fine amount in the fine table should be increased by 15%. So again, I am first selecting the fine table before updating the value, so that we can differentiate whether the value is updated. Then this is the main query that I'm executing. Update table command, update fine, set fine amount equal to fine amount into 1.15 because we are increasing by 15%. So 100 plus 15, so 1.15. 115 percentage, it is converted in decimal 1.15, where issue ID in, since the fine table has issue ID as the column, which is common with the issued for department name as the student ID. So I'm using the issue ID in, select issue ID from issued for. I'm using natural join to combine it with student and natural join to combine it with department, so that I can fetch the issue department name based on the register number of the student, which is stored in the student table, where department name is equal to computer science and student ID in, select student ID from issued for, group by student ID having count of book ID greater than 3. So this is our condition. If the student is borrowing more than 3 books, then the fine amount should be updated by 15%. So let me execute this. So table before updation, this is the table before updation. Now fine amount updated successfully. Table after updation. See these 4 records, that is 575, 230, 345 and 172. These 4 records are different. As you can see here it is 500, 200, 300, 150. That is 575, that is 15% added, 230 again 15% added, 345 and 172. And to verify whether the updation is correctly done, you can see in the issued for table that I have also executed this where the select start from issued for, so that we can verify whether the records are updated correctly. You can see the issued for table. In this issued for table, for issue ID 2000, 2001, 3 and 6, for issue ID 2001, 3 and 6. So these 3 books, that is their book IDs are different, so these are different books. But if you see the student ID, this is the same, 19 BCE 1762. These are the same student has borrowed more than 3 books. That means he has borrowed 4 books. So his fine amount is updated by 15%. So the result is achieved correctly, right? So now next move on to the 6th question, that is find the average fine amount for each department where the average is greater than 100. Display the department name and average fine amount. So we need to display the department name and the average fine amount. So for that, select department name and the average of fine amount as VGFN. I'm giving an alias name from fine natural join issued for. Since I need to fetch the fine amount, so I need the fine table natural join issued for. Based on the issue ID, the natural join will happen. Then that issue ID, the issued for table also has the student ID column. So based on a student ID column, natural join will happen with student table. And then student ID, and then it has the department ID column in the student table. So based on the department ID, the student will have a natural join with department. And from that, we can fetch the group by department name having average of fine amount as 100. So we can fetch the student details. We can fetch the fine amount and also the department name. Since we are natural joining with the department, so from there we will get the department name, right? So then I am fetching the rows by using cursor the fetch all. I am creating a data frame and displaying, and this is the except block to handle the error. So I'll run this code again. And as you can see, so 3 departments out of the 5 departments, remember we had 5 different departments. Out of those 5, these 3, that are mechanical, computer science, and electrical are having average fine amount which is greater than 100. That is 275, 330, and 175. So now the next question. List all books that have been borrowed by students who have never paid any fines. Include the student's name, book title, and borrow date. So we need to show the student's name, book title, and the borrow date. That means the issue date of those students who have never paid any fines. That means the record of those students should not be in the fine table. So see the query, select name, since I need to display the student's name, title, that means the title of the book, and the issue date, which is also the borrow date, from book, natural join issued for natural join student. So book and issued for is having book ID column. So the book and issued for the natural join will happen on the basis of book ID column. And then again a natural join will happen on the basis of student ID column with the student table. So from that we can fetch the student's name. From the book table we can fetch the book title, and the issued for, from the issued for table we can find the borrow date. But the condition is that the record should not be in the fine table. The students have never paid any fine. So where issue ID not in, select issue ID from fine. Since the fine table has a column which is issue ID, which corresponds to those issues, those book issues which are recorded as the students are recorded as paying fine. So the issue ID should not be in the fine table. So after that I'm fetching the records using cursor or fetch all, and the except block is for handling the error. Let me run this code. So as you can see, these 10 students, they have never paid any fines, right? So we have the name, the title, the brothers Karamarov, the grades, gas, but these are title of the books, the issue date of the books. Now the 8th question, for each student calculate the total number of days they have kept books from issue date to return date. Display the student's name and total days. So all the students who have borrowed books, we need to sum over the subtraction of issue date and return date. That is, return date minus issue date will be the number of days they have kept a specific book. And since we need to display the total number of days, so we will sum those records for every student. And then we'll display the student's name and the total days. So see this query, select name, sum of, round off, NVL. Now understand this, the first inner function is NVL. Now NVL is to replace a value with a specified value. For example, in this case, in return date, as I showed you while inserting, that the return date is having some null records. So those null records I am replacing with the sys date, because here they are asking calculate the total number of days they have kept the books. So if the record is null, the operation can't be performed. But we need the total number of books that the student has not that the student are keeping the books. So if the record return date is null, that means the student hasn't returned the book yet. The student is still having the book. So I will replace the return date. In that case, I'll replace the return date with the sys date, and then with the help of NVL function, and then I'll subtract it, and then I'll subtract the issue date from that return date. After that, since this is a because of sys date, the column turns into a date time values. So it will also consider, when you subtract two dates, it also considers the time component. So the dates will be coming in fractions, like 24.8 something. It will be coming in fraction. That 0.8 refers to the time. So I'm rounding the value to show whole numbers as the total days, and then I'm summing it to show the total number of days the student has kept the value, kept the book. From issued for natural join issue, natural join student, group by name. From issued for, because it has the return date, the issue table has the issue date, and the student table has the student name. And then I'm group by name. Then I'm first fetching the records and I'm displaying. Let me run this code. So here you can see the total dates are coming as 26, 16, 24, 7. Means these students they have kept the books for total of 26 days, 16 days, 24 days. So these many days they have kept the books. So let's move on to the ninth question. Find all pairs of books that have been borrowed by the same student on different dates. Display the student's name, the titles of both the books and the respective borrow dates. That means here we need to display the name, title of both the books and the respective issue dates, that is the borrow dates. For which students? The students who have borrowed the pair of books. That means two books they have borrowed on the by the same student on different dates. So see the query. Select s.name. S is the student table. B1 is the book table. That is book B1 and book B2. Since here we need to show it in pairs, so I am doing a Cartesian product. So we need to show the pairs of books. So and also the respective borrow dates. That means there will be two book titles and two borrow dates. So we also need to mention a book table and the issued for table twice in the Cartesian product. Only then we will be getting it in pairs. So I am using select s dot name b1 dot title as book 1, b2 dot title as book 2, I1 dot issue date as issue date 1 and I2 dot issue date as issue date 2. These values correspond to the two books, the pair of books. The title 1, title 2, issue date 1, issue date 2. From issued for I1, issued for I2, student test, book B1, book B2. I am giving the book table twice and the issued for table twice in the Cartesian product, so that only then the pairs can be formed. Then where these are certain conditions that the student ID should be the same, the book ID should not be the same, since we need to give pair of books. That means the book should be different. Then issue ID should not be the same, and the I1 student ID should match with the student ID, I2 book ID should match with the B1 book ID, I1 book ID should match with the B2 B1 book ID, I2 book ID should match to the B2 book ID, and this additional two records I am showing that I1 book ID should be smaller than I2 book ID, I1 issue date should be smaller than I2 issue date. This I will tell you after executing the query. Let me execute the query once. As you can see, here we are getting the pairs of books, book 1, book 2, issue date 1, issue date 2. So you remember the guy who took 4 books for whom which we updated the fine amount, that for student who has taken more than 3 books. So there was a guy who has taken 4 books. So you can see here we are having 6 pairs of William Smith. So William Smith is the guy who took 4 books on the same date. So that's why who took four books on different dates. So that's why we are having 6 pairs, because we are having two combinations from 4 possible values. So it is 4C2. That's why having 6 possible combinations. That's why we're having 6 pairs from 0 to 5. And then Jane Smith, he took for 2 books, that is Moby Dick and the Catcher in the Rye, on 2 different dates. Like that we are having all the records. Now these two, if I don't execute these two conditions, that is I1 dot book ID is less than I2 dot book ID and I1 dot issue ID is less than I2 dot issue ID, then the pairs will be repeated. Here we are getting unique combinations, that the Great Gatsby to Kill a Mockingbird, this is coming once. But if I don't execute these two conditions, then this pair, the order will again reverse and again it will be considered as a separate pair. That means To Kill a Mockingbird will come at the first and then the Great Gatsby will come at the second. That means if I don't execute these two where conditions, then it will show all the possible permutations instead of showing all the possible combinations. Let me just demonstrate it. So I'll remove these two where conditions and then I'll run again, and as you can see we have this much big table. Why? Because the pairs are repeated by changing the order. You can see To Kill a Mockingbird, the Great Gatsby. Again You can see the grade gets by, you can see here the grade gets by To Kill a Mockingbird. See, it is the same combination of books, but the pair is getting, the order is getting reversed because it is showing me all the possible permutations of taking two books from a possibility of four books, right? And for other records also you can see that the Catcher in the Rye, Moby Dick. Again, it has reversed the pair, Moby Dick, the Catcher in the Rye, because it is showing me all the possible permutations. So that's why, to show only unique combinations, let's have these two conditions, and now I will run it and see. We are having only unique combination of pairs of books, right? So this was the reason why I used these two conditions. So now let's move on to the 10th question. That identify all the books that are overdue by more than 10 days from the current date. Display the book title, student's name, issue date, and days overdue. Now, this question is for those students who haven't returned any book yet. That means in the return date, you remember in the return date, there were some null records. That means those students have just taken the book and they haven't returned the book yet. They still have the book. They haven't returned it to the library. So for those students, we need to replace it by the sys date. For those students, we need to replace it by the sys date, and we need to see which books are overdue by more than 10 days from the current date. So see the query, select title, name, issue date, round off sys date minus issue date. I'm rounding it because in a date time operation, when you're subtracting, then it also shows the number of days along with decimal values to the which includes the time component, right? So I'm rounding it to show whole numbers which represent the days as days overdue from issued for, natural join issue, natural join book, natural join student, where return date is null. I am from issue, issued for is having the return date, issue is having the issued for is having the return date, issue is having the issue date. From that I'll get the return date and the issue date. Book is having the book title, from that I'll get the title. Student is having the name, from that I'll get the name. Where the return date is null, that means the students haven't returned the book yet, so the books are overdue. And where the return date is null and sys date greater than issue date plus 10. So those which are overdue by more than 10 days, those will be shown. So let me execute this query. So as you can see here, these are the books taken by the students. They haven't returned the book yet. They still have the book, and these books are overdue by these many days. Emily Johnson has taken a book, The Great Gatsby, which is overdue by 21 days. Then Chris Williams have taken a book, The Brothers Karamazov, which is overdue by 23 days. So like that, Ashley Jones has taken the book The Catcher in the Rye, which is overdue by 26 days. So all these books are overdue by more than 10 days and they haven't returned the book yet. So they need to pay the fine. So now the last question, which is the 11th question. For each book, find the most recent issue date, display the book title and the most recent issue date. For each book, for all the books in the book table, the recent issue date, that means recently the books have been issued, so that issue date should be shown along with the title of the book. So select B title, B dot title, I dot issue date from book B, comma, issue for I. Issue for will have the issue date, book will have the title, where B dot book ID equal to I dot book ID and I dot issue date equal to select max of issue date. Since we need to show the recent issue date, so I'm using the max operation. Select max of issue date from issued for I2, where I2 dot book ID equal to B dot book ID. For this condition means that for every book in the issue, it should it should match, the book ID should match with the book ID in the book table. So I'll run this query, and you see these are the recent issue dates. The Great Gatsby has been issued this year on 2024. To Kill a Mockingbird on 2022. 1984 has been issued this year, 2024. So all these are the recent issue dates of the book. So finally, after doing all these operations, I need to close my Python database connection. So I'll just execute this I'll just execute this cell, and I'll close my Python database connection. So thank you so much for the demonstration. Thank you. Thank you for watching the demonstration.